So in module 1, I think the major topic was the branch. Mainly it's the if statement or if else statement. The if statement can be nested. So you can have a if, then under certain condition. Okay, so that's the body of the if statement. And then you can have a if else. So if the condition is true, then you go in there. If condition is not true, then you go to the else. Okay, it's pretty actually straightforward. And the if statement can also be nested. So that means you can have a if condition, and then you have a body, and the else, and you can actually put another condition. So if this condition is true, then go in there. Now, if this is not true, and check another condition. Okay, if this is true, then go in there. Okay, and then you can have another else if this is not true, check this one. This is still not true, and check this one. Okay, and then if this is true, then go in there and finish the if statement and quit. Now, so you can actually have many else if as you want. But if this condition is not true, and this condition is not true, this condition is not true, and all the else if condition is not true, then you're probably going to actually go into the last case, the else. Else basically means none of the conditions above is true. So you can use the if statement in many different ways. Okay, so you can directly use the if statement without else. That means if the condition is true, go in there. If the condition is not true, skip that block. Now, the while loop is actually is another important Java actually statement. So this is also another control statement, just like an if statement. In while statement, you're going to check the condition. This is always the condition. Okay. So for while loop, that's the syntax. You put a while, and if the condition is true, then you execute the loop. Okay. So the loop is actually included in the braces. So you execute the loop, and then now the while loop. The difference between while loop and if statement is the while actual loop is actually a loop. Unlike if statement, it's just a branch. So you either go into that branch, execute the statement in that particular block, or execute the statement in other block. And that's it. Now, while loop is basically, so the block will be repeatedly executed. If the expression is true, then you're going to execute everything inside this while block. And then once you complete the block, you're going to go back and check the condition. And if the condition is still true, and then you're going to execute the block again, and then go back, check the condition. So you're going to repeatedly check the condition until the condition is no longer true. Then you quit the while loop and execute the statement after the expression evaluation to fail. So that means in the while loop, this expression is a very important, because if it's true, then you're going to always execute the body of the while loop. So that gives us some kind of a clue that somehow you need to change the expression, right? You have to change the expression. Every time when you complete the while loop, you should somehow, in the body of the while loop, you should change the condition. Okay. So if you actually don't change any condition, then this expression, if it's true, it will always be true. So that's That's called infinite loop, or a kind of trap in there. So that means, for example, one of the example is, suppose I have x equals 20. So then I'm going to check the loop, say, is x less than 30? So that's the expression in the while loop. Now, initially I assign x to 20. So 20 assigned to x. So x is 20 and 20 compared with 30, and this is true, right? So now I'm going to execute everything inside the while loop. However, when you go back, somehow in the body, you should change the value of x. You have to change the value of x. If you don't change the value of x, when you go back, it's the same condition, which is 20 less than 30. And it's still true. You're going to execute the body again. If you don't change the value of x, then this while loop will execute forever. That's called infinite loop, which is a problem, right? So you're never going to stop the program. So in there, somehow you need to actually update the x value of x. For example, one of the possible is that if it's in the body of the while loop, I'm going to actually add a statement to say x equals x plus 2, or x plus 3, or x plus 1. So that means when x is 20, 20 is less than 30, and the condition is true, you execute the body, and inside this body, I update the value of x. So x was 20, now 20 plus 2, now assigned to x. So now x is 22, right? So now you go back, and 22 is still less than 30. So you're still going to execute this one. But again, when you actually, each time when you execute the body of the while loop, the value of x going to increase by 2. So that means sooner or later, the value of x is going to be greater than or equal to 30. So in that case, the condition is no longer true. So that way it means that if you have an expression, somehow you need to change the condition. Okay. So that's the while loop. Now, one of the examples, I can actually give you one of the examples. Okay. So you can see how this is actually working. Let me actually show you one example. Okay. Now this is an example. It's pretty simple example. Oh no, that's not the one I'm looking for. Okay, yeah, this is an example. If you can see this example. So you have the Java statement, and so I declare a string. It's called a string, and also a scanner, so I can object. So then I actually import a string, so from the prompt. So I'm going to check that the string I imported, whether the string I imported equals by, B-Y-E, or not. Now, if the string I imported is not by, then that means a string dot equals by is not true. Then you can actually print out this statement. You're going to print out this statement. So your import string is a string. And then print another one, say, please enter next string. So in the next string, then I'm going to actually call this, scanner again, the scanner object again, import our next string. So this can actually create another prompt, ask you to import the string. So then as far as the string you import is not by, then the while loop is going to continue. So this is actually the statement that probably going to change the condition, right? Because each time, so you're going to import a string and assign to a string. So the value of a string going to always changing. each time when you actually execute the while loop. Okay, so let's actually just look at the first while loop, and the second one is about the for loop. So so let's take a look at the statement before the for loop. Okay, let me actually run this. Okay, so if I type, say, I'm executing this one. I type Brady. Let's see, that's the import. So the Brady, so this is actually at the prompt, I type a Brady. So Brady will be assigned to a string. So this, it's going to execute this statement, right? It will execute this statement. Okay. This statement was executed. So if I hit enter, so then you're going to check. It's a Brady. So check whether Brady equals by. So Brady is not the same string as by. So then you're going to print to say you import the string Brady. You import the string Brady. And then the next statement say, please enter next string. Okay. So I enter next string John. Okay. So this time you're going to actually execute this one, right? So when the John is imported, you're gonna be assigned to a string. Once I actually assigned a string, then I'm gonna go, because that's the last statement in the while loop. So I'm gonna go back to the while condition and check whether John equals by, and looks like it's not, right? So that means this statement is still true. Okay, your import is John. So please enter next one. So you actually go back to this. Now, if I type by, what happens? So the word by will be assigned to a string. So then a string will compared to the by, and a string equals by, so which is true. And then now I have a factorial, which means the negative or the opposite of true. So that means it's false. So if it's false, then I'm gonna stop the while loop, and you will see that the for loop will start. So now the for loop, which is this one. Okay. So this gives you some kind of idea how the while loop actually works. Okay. So now the for loop is another one. So it's not something I want to talk about at this moment. Okay. So in that case, what you want to do is you should be careful about this loop when you do the while loop. So the common error is to accidentally create an infinite loop. Often by forgetting to update the variables in the body, like the one we just talked about, or by creating a loop expression whose evaluation to fail isn't always reachable. So because for the while loop, if it's true, then you execute the body. If it's false, then you quit the while loop. So the false never going to be reached. So that means it's always true. So then you were stuck in the while loop. Okay. So now we also talk about a for loop. For loop is actually a very special case for the while loop. We mentioned that if the number of loop is so you know exactly how many loop we're going to do. So we know the number of times the loop are going to be executed. Then for loop is a very good option. Again, as I say, that if you can use the for loop, then there's always equivalent to while loop. You can always use while loop to replace the for loop. So here I gave you the example. So the following the following for loop and the while loop are equivalent. So in a while loop, if I say I equals 0 and while I less than 5, which is true initially, right? And then you have a loop body, and then you increment I. So now initially I is 0, but now I is 1. Go back and check 1 with 5, and it's still less than 5. So you execute the loop and increment I, and then I equals 2. Now, so each time when you execute the loop, the value of I increased. Okay, so until when I equals 5, then the while loop stops because the condition is false. Now, this while loop can be replaced with the for loop. What you can say, this is the initial condition. Okay, just like this one. Okay, and then this is a condition, checking condition, and that's the update, like equivalent to this one. So basically, I equals 0. So you first execute when I equals 0. You execute the loop. Okay, and then once you complete the loop, then I going to be increment based on this increment. So I going to be equals I plus 1. So then I equals 1. So then you check the I, which is 1 and the 5. So this condition is still true, and execute the for loop, and then increment I again to 2, increment I again to 3. So for loop is actually some kind of simple version of while loop. It's a shortcut for while loop. So you can actually, in a while loop, you need a couple of statements, but a for loop, you can compress everything in one line. But again, normally you know exactly how many times the loop is going to be executed. Okay, so this is the case. Now, the only case that most of case that the while loop can be replaced with for loop, but except for one case when you don't know how many loop you're going to actually execute. Okay, like the example we talked about. Remember the example we talked about? Let's see. This example, right? This is a while loop. Okay, but you have no idea how many times you're going to execute the while loop, because the while loop is actually waiting for the input from the user. And as far as user import any string which is not by bye, then the while loop is going to continue. So when the while loop can be terminated it is depend on, basically is dependent on whether the user can actually import the word by or not. So you can actually continue to actually execute the while loop until the user decide, okay, I'm not going to continue. Let's say by, I just type a by, and then the while loop end. So in this case, you have no control. So in that case, the while loop cannot be replaced by for loop. Okay. A nested loop. So you can have a loop inside the loop. Okay, which is again, so a nested loop is a loop that appears in the body of another loop. So you can have a nested loop like 2 times, 3 times, and sometimes it's the loop inside the body is called the inner loop, and the outside loop is called out loop. Okay, that's what it says, inner loop and out loop. Okay, so for example, you can have a for loop, and then you have another for loop inside this. Okay, now again, let me actually show you an example. Let's see what example I can show you. You have to apologize me. I have to prepare for this code. I don't want to type in the class for saving time. So if you're actually interested in this code, I can actually post on the Blackboard. Okay, so you can run this by yourself. Now, this is an example of the nested loop. So you have a for statement here. And so just keep that in mind. If you want to type any for statement, then you have a brace to actually define the range of this for loop. So you have an opening brace and a closing brace. Okay. So, and then inside the loop, then you're going to say, okay, I'm going to print out a statement to say week plus I. So I is the counter, right? Because I is actually changing. And then inside the for loop, I have another for loop. That for loop is actually, loop around another variable, j. Okay. Now, what is this loop about? What is this loop about? Now, this loop actually going to print out, so I define a number of weeks, which is 3. Okay, I have 3 weeks. And then the number of days in a week. Okay, it's 7. Okay, 7 days a week. So I want to print, week 1, week 2, and week 3. And in week 1, I have 7 days. In week 2, I have 7 days. So that's why the outer loop, this outer loop basically loop around number of weeks. So I'm going to have I equals 1, and then increment I, and then you compare I with the number of weeks. So I equals 1, which is less than 3. I equals 2, which is less than 3. I equals 3, which is less than or equal to 3. So this loop we're going to actually, execute it 3 times. Now, each time when I execute the loop, I'm going to print out the value of I. Okay. So then in the loop basically tells you that for each value of I can actually loop around the j. Okay, j is from 1, 2, 3, 4, 5, 6, 7, because as far as it's less than number of days, which is 7, then I'm going to continue the loop. So in that loop, I'm going to print out days, the string, and also a particular value of j. So j can start from 1 to 7. Okay, so for week equals 1, I'm going to print day from 1 to 7. For week of 2, I'm going to print day 1 to 7. And for week of 3, I'm going to print out this. Okay, so let's actually check that one. Let's run it. Takes some time. Okay, so then you can see that the nested loop example, this is this printout statement, right? And then I do the loop for I equals 1. I'm going to print a week 1, right? I equals 1. Okay, so week 1. And then for week 1, I can do the loop. And I'm going to loop the days for 7 times. Loop the j for 7 times. So each value of j represent a day, right? So it's a day. When j equals 1, day 1. When j equals 2, day 2. So I can actually, so for each value of loop I, so I get a loop with a j. And then once you're complete, then you go back and I change the value of I, increment the I for P to 2. So now you talk about week 2, and then you can do 7 loops for the day. And then after you finish the second loop and I go back to the outer loop, which is I equals 3, and then I can do the 7 loop. So that's the nested loop. You will find out the outer loop going to be executed very slowly, right? But the inner loop is going to be executed very frequently. So for each value of out loop, you're going to execute the inner loop once. For each value of out loop, you're going to execute the inner loop many times. So the frequency for the inner loop is very, very high. Okay, so that's the nested loop. Okay. Now, so the other thing I want to mention about, I think I did not emphasize this, but now I'm going to do this. In Java, you actually have two keywords. One is called break, and the other one is called continue. These are Java defined keyword. Now, how are we going to use the keyword? So sometimes the break statement basically in the loop can cause an immediate exit of the loop. If you see the break statement, if you see break in the loop, then you will immediately quit the loop. Even the loop says, I'm going to actually do the loop for 100 times, but then suddenly in the middle, when the Java actually find out execute the break statement, then it will quit the loop. It will stop the loop. Okay, so that's the break statement. Now the continued loop is a kind of different, slightly different. In a loop, in a continue statement will cause the immediate loop jump to the loop condition check. So if you actually do the loop, you remember you're going to check the condition. If it's true, then you execute the loop. And then once you complete the body of the loop, then you go back and check the condition. Now, if inside the body, the Java actually execute a condition continue. If the continue statement is executed, then the Java going to stop the current execution of the body and jump to check the condition again. You can actually stop, even the body is not completed, it will stop and check the condition again and execute the next time. Okay, so there's difference. Break is basically it's totally quit the loop. Continue may not quit the loop. It may just quit the execution of the current body. Okay, so you're going to jump to the next loop. Okay, so that's the difference. Now, to see what's the difference between continue and break, I'm going to actually show you the same example. The same example I just showed. Let me, okay, remember that this example. The first part is the nested loop, and the second part is the break example and the continue example. Now, let's run it again. Okay. Okay. So again, the first part is the loop, week 1, week 2, week 3, and then once they complete the nested loop, and the next one, I start the system.out, print line, break example, right? So I start the break example. Now let's take a look at the break example. What do you see? So I have a loop, for loop. So I equals 0 and I less than 6. And the increment value of I, right? Okay. Now, if there's no such a if statement inside a loop, then I can actually check. So first I got to check whether I equals 4. If I equals 4, then I execute the break statement. The break statement. Remember, the break statement was executed even when only when I equals 4. If I is not 4, then what happens? If I is not 4,
it breaks and it just stops the execution.
No, if I is not 4. So if I equals 4, then you execute the break. But if I is not 4,
oh, then you keep going.
So they're going to ignore this if statement, right? The Java going to ignore this if statement, correct?
Yes.
Okay. Okay. So that means if I is not 4, then this for loop just execute this statement. Okay, now only when I equals 4, then you can actually enter the break, actually execute the break. Now remember, if I actually, the Java actually execute the break, you're gonna quit the loop. Okay, so let's take a look at this output. So it looks like the loop works fine. When I equals 0, I'm gonna say I equals 0, right? So that means I, that's a string, and the plus I, that's concatenate. So that when I equals 0, then I equals 0. When I then go back to the for loop and increment I and go back, and when I equals 1, I execute I equals 1, I equals 2, I equals 3. However, when I reach the value of I equals 4, when I equals 4, then the break actually gonna kick in. So it will quit the for loop. Okay. So basically that means if this if statement is not executed, let's actually comment the if statement out. I comment this if statement out. Now let's run. What you're going to see is the break statement. I'm going to execute I from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 5. So I'm going to execute all 6 loop, right? Because when I equals 0 to 5, this condition is always true. So I'm going to execute all these statements. Okay. Now, this if statement actually cut the for loop short. It gets terminated when I equals 4. So it cut it short. Okay. Now, what's the continue example? If I use the continue, so it's exactly the same code like the previous one, but the only difference is that in the if statement, I this time I'm gonna do the loop for j. Okay, so when j equals 0 and j less than 6, j plus plus, and then if j equals 4, I'm gonna do the continue versus the break. What's the difference? What's the difference? When j equals 0, that's fine. 0 equals 4, that's false. So I'm going to skip the if statement. So I'm going to skip the if statement for j equals 0, 1, 2, 3, right? When j equals 4, then I'm going to do the continue. What does continue means? I'm going to quit the current body and jump and check the condition again. So that means, so here I stop the current body. So I'm not going to execute this one. Okay, I'm going to stop and jump to the next condition. So that means you can see that the continue actually basically skip the j equals 4. So j equals 0, 1, 2, 3, and 5. There's no 4. Okay. That's why the continue statement says in a loop cause an immediate jump to the loop condition check. So that means it stop the current execution of the current loop. Even some of the statement in the loop hasn't been executed, it will not execute. It will stop, jump to the condition checking, which means actually jump to the next loop. Okay. So I think that's pretty much all. And one more topic I want to talk about. So it's variable actually name scope. Okay. So the variable name scope basically means if the variable is declared in the main method, then this variable scope is the main method. Okay, so that means it's recognizable inside this method. But if it's actually declared in a block, this name is only recognizable in a block. Okay, so let's see. Let's check the condition again. This code again. So, for example, if I actually, declare integer called num_weeks, this num_week is declared inside the main method, right? Or inside the main method. Okay, so you can use this num_week everywhere. Okay, so even like here, you can use the here, you can use it everywhere. But if I declare this in a body, like if statement, then if I actually refer this variable outside the if statement, Java gonna say it's an error. I don't know what it is because this is outside the scope. Okay. So we will see that kind of example later on. So I'm not gonna actually, I'm gonna continue with this. Now, enumeration is actually, enumeration is, it's kind of interesting that sometimes you want to declare a variable, right? So say I declare a variable, say int x. Then x is declared as integer, right? What does that mean? So x could be a value like a 0, 1, 2, 3, 4, -1, -2. So x could be like this. Okay. So every time when you declare a type, then x is an integer type. Okay. Okay. Now, in certain case, people want to define its own type. I want to define my own type. For example, I want to actually use a variable which is actually defined by my own. So how am I going to declare it? I can use this. I'm going to say public in num. And then, so if I want to declare a variable which only contains a limited number of value, then I can use the enumeration, and that's the syntax. Now the identify basically say, okay, if I want to actually define a week, okay, okay. Now I gotta say Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday. Okay, let me actually, so I'm running out of space, so I'm gonna actually continue Friday, Saturday, and a Sunday. Okay, so that's enumerate. So then I define a new type called a week, W-E-E-K. Okay. So once I define a new type called a week, then I can use the week. So I can say week. I'm gonna say my week. Okay. So now the my week is a type of week. And my week only can take a value from Monday, Tuesday, Wednesday, Thursday, and a Friday. Only 7 values. Okay. So I can say assign my week, say my week equals, and then I can use the name called week dot Monday. I can do that. I assign. So you have to use the the week, the type of name. So then you can define a week. you can use the week just like int or float or string. So you can use as, but this type week only has 7 different values. You cannot assign any other values. Okay, these values are defined in something called enumeration. It's an enumeration type. Okay. Now to see this, let's take a look at the example, the challenge activity 4.11.1. Let's take a look at this. Okay. Okay, so let's see. Now print either fluid or drink, followed by a new line. So depending on the value, user items. If the user item is GR apples, the output should be fluid. So in this particular example, let's just say, so I have defined a class called grocery sorter. So then I define an enumeration. In this time, the enumeration is called grocery item. I define grocery sorting. So I just it's a kind of yeah, it's a so I say GR apples, GR bananas, GR juice, GR water. So the grocery item there actually is defined as a type. That type contains only 4 values: apple, banana, juice, and water. Okay. So then I declare user item as the type of grocery item, which is defined here. Okay. So in this case, I define my own type. I'm not going to use like integer type, use the actually type defined in the library. I define my own type. So then the problem says print either fruit or drink, depending on the value of user item. Okay. So looks like which actually value which value is the fluid, which values is fluid, which values are drink. What about the apple? Is an apple fluid or drink?
It's a fruit.
It's a fruit. Banana?
Fruit.
Juice?
Drink.
Water. It's a
Drink.
right? So that means, so depend on the user. Actually, I use this in a user actually. If I assign a user item, assign any value in a grocery item to the user item. Now you're gonna check the user item if whether the user item is a fluid or drink. So what are you gonna do? So print either fluid or drink, followed by a new line. That means a print line, depending on the value of the user item. So what I'm gonna do that I'm gonna check the user item, right? Now, in which circumstance I'm gonna print? In which circumstance I'm gonna print fluid?
If it's equal to apples or bananas.
Okay. Let's see. It's equal. You have to type a grocery item dot. So if the user item equals grocery item dot apple or banana, right? Now, if user item equals apples or bananas, then print fluid. Else, so in this case, I just say else, right? I'm gonna change this to drink. This is how you're gonna use the enumerate. Okay. Now here is an assignment. Of course, you can change it. You can use the scanner and import the scanner value, right? So you can do whatever you want. So let's run this. Oh, that's my mistake. I have to use double equal. Single equal basically means assignment, which is fine. When you do the coding, don't be scared if you have a compile error. Again, I just always mention that if you have a compile error, just fix it. Okay. Again, I have an error. Cannot find the symbol. Grocery item, GR apple. Oh, banana. And did I spell? And I spell wrong.
Oh, you forgot the GR.
Okay, GR. Yeah. Okay. Here we go. So we got it. So I think enumeration is actually kind of easy to use. You know, if you actually in the coding, if you have something, you know, a particular type of variable, you only want the variable to actually have couple of values. Okay. For example, the week. Okay, I want to define a week. You know, then there are only actually 7 days in a week. Okay. Or I can define month. Or I can define a traffic light. So then if I define and enumerate for the traffic light, then how many values do you expect to see?
Just 3.
Just 3, right? Yeah. Red, green, yellow. That's a 3 different colors. So then in this case, if you want a particular value, say traffic light only takes 3 values, and any other values are wrong, then you can use the enumerations. Enumerations just make it easier for you, you know, for people to actually define a certain type of data. Okay. So I think that's pretty much all for the all the topics we covered in module 1. So if you still need help in module 1, please let me know. Otherwise, I'm going to jump to module 2, which is the chapter 5. The first part of module 2 is chapter 5. So,
is today the final day for the rest of module 1?
yes, that's
Okay.
pretty much it.
All right.
So that means I complete the topics in from chapter 1 to chapter 4. So that's the.
I mean to submit like on Zybooks.
Yeah, for submit to the Zybooks, that's kind of tricky because the due date has been passed already. You can check the due date. But if you need help, as I mentioned that in my syllabus, if you submit late, just please actually let me know. So I still want to submit, but in that case, I may actually give you some, some kind of penalty, like a 10% off for it. But I still accept the later submission. So, but the Zybook gonna close already, has been closed already. So if you do any work right now, the Zybook will not give you credit. In that case, please email me. Say, I've done my work, but I passed the due date. please actually help me. So then I can actually update this and allows the die-books to count to your credit. Okay, but you need to send me an email. Just let me know. Let me know. So you can actually complete it, and then you can tell me that I just completed it. You know.
Yeah, I remember you saying we had like an extra week for 3 and 4. So in Zybooks, of course, it like gives you the deadline, and then it doesn't count it after the deadline. So
yes, I say that. That's the reason why I extended the due date, the deadline a couple of times, already. So if you actually still need more days, you have to actually let me know.
yeah, I'll have it done today. I just wanted to make sure.
Okay. Any other questions?
I did have one issue where I'm trying to do lab 417, and the output requires it to have the output of the words without the characters, and then it wants a new line. And the issue I'm having is like if I try to add a new line, it's going to put each letter on a new line.
Okay, so what's the problem? It's a
417.
417. Let me. Okay, remove all the non-alphabet characters. Are you available at the 12:30? So I can actually
Yeah, I can.
talk. Yeah, I can. If you actually stay on, if you come back with the same link, the Google link, then I can actually talk to you about this in my office hour. For individual questions that we can always talk during my office hour. Okay.
Mhm.
Oh, I think someone just to answer your question already. Yeah.
Yeah,
Okay.
I tried that. I might have forgot. I might have put it inside the loop by accident, but I tried the empty print line and it was giving me issues. But I'll try it again.
Try this. If it still didn't work out, just come back at 12:30, and yeah, you can talk. We can work one by one. Okay. Okay. So, any other questions before I move forward? Okay. So today we're gonna talk about the array, chapter 5 array. So I think I can actually switch back and forth between the PowerPoint and the Zybook. So we can actually, when I talk about the topics, I can actually go back and do the exercises. That's probably something. That's probably something I'm gonna do. So far we actually know how to. Let me actually check. We know how to declare a type. So you can declare, there are various different types. Integer type, okay. You can declare double, which is a floating point. And you can also declare string type. Z is a string type. Or you can even define your own enumerations type, right? So then you can actually define your own type. Okay. So these are all, declaration for a type. But this is basically for individual variable. So if I declare x as integer, then x is an integer, y is double, and z is string. Now, array basically allows us to declare a list of items. Okay, so if I want to declare, for example, I want to declare a string. Now, I want to declare a string called student. Okay. Now, if I declare string as student, then student is a string type. So I can say student equals John, right? So I assign John to student because student is a string. So I can do that. But what about if I want to declare a group of students? For example, a student in a class. So then you want to actually say, one way you can do is like you can say string student 1, string student 2. If I have 20 students, then I need to actually declare this 20 times. Student 1, 2, 3, 4, all the way to 20. Okay, that's one way, right? Now, we find out this is actually really a better way to do that. And Java provide a array to do this, to to declare a list of items. And it's actually ordered list, like this one, student 1, 2, 3, 4. So it's ordered. There's a 1, 2, 3, 4. Ordered items for a given data type. Okay. Now, the syntax for this is pretty simple. You depend on which type you want to declare, and there's a data type, and you put a bracket over here. Okay, square. It's actually square bracket, and then the variable. This variable represent a list of the items. Okay. Then I use a new and data type, and this is actually called new operator. It's an operator, and this is an array reference. Okay, it's an array reference variable. Okay, this operator basically creates a space in memory to store array. So normally it's a number. Okay, it's a number element. That's called a new operator. So let's take a look at example. So if I want to, in this particular case, if I want to define a group of students, so I can say string. Okay, so that's a data type, and I put the square bracket. Then I can say student new string. Now I've got to put the operator here. Now depend on how many students you want to actually declare. So if you want to declare a array of 20 students, then you can put a 20 here. Okay. So now I declare an array called a student, which contains 20 students. Okay. Now, how can I use this array? Now, how can I assign a value to each individual student? Because I declare an array of 20 students. Now, if I really have a 20 student, John, Mary, and I have a total 20 student, how should I assign the values? Okay. Now, this is actually, there are a couple of different ways you can do this. Okay. Now, to illustrate this, let's take a look at the participation activity. Let's take a look at this. Okay. What is the 5.2.1? Okay, let's take a look. How can I use the array? Okay, so here you can see that when you declare in this case, I declare not the student, but I declare an item. It's an integer type, right? So there are total actually 3 items. And then I can assign a value to each array item. So array item count is array, the name of the array. So now you have a total of 3. So then you can use the index to represent each individual item. So item counts, you have a total 3, and then this total 3 represented by, item 0, item 1, and item 2, and each of these represent an index. Okay, I can assign item counts 0 with 122, and then 119, 117. So I can assign this. Okay, so then if I want type, I can print it like item counts 1. This can actually print out 119. Okay. So now let's take a look at the example of the student. Okay. So let's take a look the student example. Here. Let's do this. I can create a new Java. So let's say array. Okay, I'm gonna say module 2 array example. I create this. That's cool. So now let's say string. Then say student plus new. Say I'm gonna say I'm not gonna use 20. Let's say use 5. Okay, I can just declare 5 student. Now I can say this student 0. So I'm gonna change to 1, 2, 3. And the okay. So I can assign the value for each of the student. Now, when I declare a student, a string type called student, and then this is actually the number of array actually elements. Okay, so I have 5 elements. So now I use the index from 0 to 4. So that's 5, right? So just keep that in mind. In most computer language, when you declare an array of 100, and you will remember that if you actually refer the array items using the index, the largest index value is not 100. Okay, because you start from 0. So the largest array index is 99 because you start from 0. So 0 to 99, that's a total of 100 items. Okay, that's all. It's kind of tricky because people always forgot about this and just say, okay, what's the last student in that case? And then they say, oh, student 5 equals Mary. And which is wrong, because when you declare an array of 5, the largest actual index is 4. Okay, not a 5. Just keep that in mind. Now, once you have an array, then you will realize it's very convenient to do things. Okay. For example, if you want to print all the student, now what are you going to do? You're going to say system dot out dot print in. If I want to print the third student, that's 2, right? 0 is the first student, 1 is the second student, third student is. Okay, let's actually do this. Okay, it printed out as Mary, which is fine. Now, what about if I want to print all the students? What do you think? What are you going to do?
Student 5 to get all of them.
Student 5.
Yeah, because it'll be from 0, 1, 2, 3, and 4 in order to get all of them.
Okay, let's try. Error message. Okay, because Java believes you want to print a particular student and with an index file. However, index file is not valid. Okay, if you want to print all the list of the student, remember the index. You can start the index from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. So remember the loop, right? If you want to use a for loop, if you already know how many extra items you want to print, then the best way to use is a loop. How many students want to type? 5, from 0 to 4, right? Okay. What are you going to put in here?
You're going to put I.
You're going to put the I. Okay. Because you're going to do the loop for I. So each time when I equals 0, you're going to print the student 0. When I equals 1, you print the student 1, right? I equals 2. And you're going to do the loop from 0, 1, 2, 3, 4. And when I equals 5, then the for loop terminate. Okay. Gave me 4. Oh, crap. I used I, but I hasn't been declared, Okay. So you can declare I as an integer, right? But you can actually, even many times people actually declare I over here. But I don't like this idea, because if you use the actually for loop next time, so then if you actually still declare, and so the I should be declared only once. So I declare here. Okay. So the I is used but not declared. Okay. Okay, I got this. So it's I equals 0 to 5. Yeah. So that's a good thing about the loop. Okay. You don't see actually much advantage in here, because you only actually talk about an array of 5 elements. But what about if you have an array of 1,000 students? So you can actually do this 1,000 times, but if you use a loop, you just change the value here, right? That's an easy approach. Okay, So just keep that in mind that in array, the nth element can be accessed using index n-1. Okay. When you access the actually fourth student, you're going to use index 3 because the first student is index 0. Okay. So you always actually subtract 1 using the index. Okay. Okay. Now the other way you can initialize the assigned value to the array is just to use the brace. When you declare the array, then you can use the brace. Okay. So for example, in this case, int, that's an array of integers. You use this. That's part of the syntax. It says my array. Okay. And then I declare my array instead of actually say int my array equals new int 3, and then you can say int my array 0 equals 5, my array 1 equals 7, and my array 2 equals 11. So I assign the value for each of individual one, and then I can do this. This is very convenient. Now, if you declare an array with a very small number, so the array size is very small, then you can use this. Now, this basically just tells you declare an array as my array as array of integer, and the array number 0 is 5, array number 1 is 7, and array 11 is array 2 is 11. So it's basically the same as this. Okay. So, but this is a very it's a shortcut. It's just you just use one line instead of 4 lines here. But this only applies to an array of a small size. If you talk about array of 1,000 elements, now this is actually not practical, right? Because you try to actually import 1,000 items in there. And in this case, using a declared array using this approach, like a 1,000, and then you can use the loop, like a for loop, to assign each of the value. That's probably faster, okay, I think that's pretty much it for today. I'm I'm going to stop here. So I'm going to actually actually provide a new assignment for this, and so please actually start your work on the Zai book to check each of the things, and then I'm going to actually continue to talk about the chapter 5 next one. The array itself is pretty simple concept, but you need to do a lot of practice. That's probably the best way to learn the material. The syntax is pretty simple. It's not really that difficult. Okay, I think that's pretty much all I want to talk about for today, and I can actually stop the recording now.